Well, folks, here we are with Rebecca Contreras. I've got a laundry list here, not a real laundry list, but a list of accolades and accomplishments. We're super lucky to have someone like yourself on. Reading your story was moving, and you are the ideal person to have on this podcast. You really are. So thank you for coming by.
Well, thank you, Greg, for having me. I'm thrilled.
Of course. So let's see here. We got Small Business Association's distinction as the 2023 Small Business Champion of the Year for the Texas District. Woo! Gold Stevie Women in Business Award for Best Female Entrepreneur. Yep. Remarkable Woman of Central Texas by KXAN News. And the list goes on and on and on. This is absolutely incredible. So let's throw it back here. It's not Thursday, but we're going to throw it back anyways. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my story is no different than the normal American story. There are a lot of people, I think, in America that grow up in hopelessness and have tragedy or trauma in their life. And I'm one of those kids that, grew up in the border town of El Paso, Texas. And back in the day when you could literally walk across the bridge to go to Juarez. Now you can't do that because you'll get shot. But we grew up in abject poverty. When I tell people abject poverty, it was like below ground zero poverty, poverty that should not exist in America, but does in our inner city communities. And my mom, was in and out of project housing and welfare. And there are 4 kids. I am one of my twin brother and I have a different father. Our father was from Yugoslavia. We didn't know him. He was here. He was the owner of a nightclub my mom was a dancer at, and one night stand type thing. And then my older brother's dad was Mexican, and my sister's dad was black. So we always used to tell my mom, you just need the Asian to complete the circle of diversity. But none of us knew our fathers, and none of us had fathers involved in our life. And my mother, unfortunately, was plagued with addiction. Heroin addiction was heroin and LSD were the 2 drugs of her choice. They were what I call escape drugs, right? Get out of what's going on in my own life and escape. And she really had a lot of issues, struggled, no business having kids, but did. And we grew up with a mother who was mentally ill and had addictions with drugs and did not understand her own identity and didn't know who she was as a woman, much less the fact that she could raise children. And so, I tell the full story in my book, LostGirl. The first 3 chapters are dedicated to really laying the foundation for my upbringing and how I grew up. Because, a lot of people grow up in single-parent homes. As you know, it's an epidemic in America. There are a lot of single-parent homes, and there's single-parent homes where you have involved mothers or involved fathers that are working really hard to take care of their child as a single parent, and then there's single-parent homes where you have absent parents. And so in my case, was absent, and at age 5, my mother told us she was going to the grocery store and never came back and left us in the project housing by ourselves.
You were how old?
I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
My twin brother and I were 5. My baby sister was barely 6 months old in the crib, and she was gone. And we were there 3 days by ourselves until the neighbor called my grandmother, my abuelita, and said, "Hey, Graciela has left. You need to come get these kids, or I'm calling, foster services." And so we could have been, Greg, a product of the system had it not been for my precious grandmother.
Wow.
So those were really rough young years. At age 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, not really having that foundation. So, Mom was gone for 2 years, and we didn't know anything other than she was on the streets of Juarez, doing, who knows what. And she didn't communicate with us, and we didn't see her for 2 years until she returned when I was about 7.
So you said it was rough during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
What made it rough?
Well, I think, and I go into great detail in the book about poverty, emotional poverty, spiritual poverty, physical poverty. abuse. When you have a parent who is mentally ill and addicted to drugs and has men in and out of the house exposing you to things that a child should never be exposed to. And I share some pretty raw details in the book about my experience at age 4 or 5 and watching that. It's really traumatic, and then not understanding as a little girl why, I was a beautiful little girl. I had a lot of joy. I wanted to be loved. And when you don't have that in return, my mother loved me. And later on in life, we became friends and I forgave her, and I lost her about 10 years ago to cancer. But she went to heaven with that closure, and I was happy to, bring that closure to her. But, we used to talk with her. I used to talk with her about, Mom, I don't understand what I did to not deserve your love. And my mother did not have the capacity as an addict or as a mentally ill mother to love me other than how she knew to love me.
Right.
She was very affectionate and very kind when she was sober, but she was absent most of my life. And so, that's a very difficult thing as a child to have to figure out your own way. The only saving grace was those. I spent 4 years with my grandmother, and they were the most amazing, precious 4 years between the age of 5 and 9. My mother did come off the streets. She came back and brought us to Austin and ripped us away from my grandmother after not being with her for almost 4 years. And I was about 9 going on 10 when I moved to Austin. And she tried to be a mom, but it was difficult. She was not an addict anymore. She was clean, but it was a very difficult journey not knowing her and really developing, I don't want to say hate. I think the hate for her developed when I was a teenager because I couldn't understand and I got more and more angry. But the emptiness and the void as a child of wanting so desperately to be loved by your parent that was not capable of loving you the way you needed to be loved.
What was it like in the house on a day-to-day
during
that time period?
I can tell you, I have memories. One in particular memory that I share in the book when I was about 4. And it's interesting because I didn't start having these memories till I went through trauma healing and went through counseling and started talking to my counselor about my past. And she helped do very deep therapy around remembering, not because I wanted to go backwards, but because I really wanted to heal and deal with that pain. And one memory in particular, we got kicked out of the project housing because Mom was doing drugs and having all sorts of men there, and it was against the rules, so they kicked her out. And we ended up in this double-wide trailer, the 5 of us, her and the 4 kids, and her friend, who was also an addict, with her kids, and there were like 13 people living there. And it was a 3-bedroom trailer, and we were all piled up in a room, together. And I remember it was probably super early in the morning, waking up to just this horrific noise, and just being startled and walking into a room of that trailer house to just see bodies laying on the floor on top of each other. And just that smell, that stench of smoking dope and just bodies, and you should never have to experience that as a child. That is like etched in my memory. And thankfully, through healing, through trauma healing, and through counseling, and through the good Lord's, healing on my body and my mind, I've been able to move past that. But when you don't know where your mother is, and you don't know if she's coming home, or you don't know if you're going to be abused. I was abused at age 5 by a trusted uncle. He was supposed to be an uncle. He wasn't, but I was to call him uncle, or whatever that means.
Family friend.
Yeah. And so, talking to my mom about it and her not believing me, and, quit making stories up. And it's just,
you don't have a voice.
Yeah. You don't have a voice. And I think there's so many children and women today that are in that same boat. Probably more than we care to know or maybe understand. I know as I travel the country, I hear from women who are dealing in their 50s. I'm 54. They're in their 50s and they're just dealing with their abuse of their past. And I always encourage women, don't shy away from it. Don't bury it. Because when you bury it, it manifests in other areas of your life when you're married, in relationships, and you have to expose it. It's it's like excavating things in your mind and in your heart that need to be exposed and healed.
Because if you don't,
you will. So abuse people. And fast forward, we're in Austin with my mother, who had become clean. She had met God. I wasn't interested in her God because I couldn't understand, the whole component of how she comes to Austin rehabilitated, but encountering religion, but then immerses herself in her religious activities and abandons us again, and is not really ever present for us. And so it was a very difficult time for me to understand that God that she said rescued her. And at age 13, I ended up starting drug use myself, and so I had a very from 13 till I got delivered at 19, a very hard drug use, but ended up pregnant at 17 and dropping out of school and, abandoning my own daughter. My mom actually took her away from me to raise her. And like I said, at the time she was clean, so she was a little more functional, right? She hadn't dealt with the demons of her past, so to speak, but she was there for me in that season and took my daughter so that the system wouldn't take her away. And I got her back when she was 3 years old. But here I am. I'm repeating the cycle. So this is why I say abuse people. When you have a cycle, you got to break the cycle. And breaking the cycle is not easy. It's difficult and it's traumatic, but it's necessary in order to live your best life.
You talked about trauma therapy. Right, that was the phrase, trauma therapy. How does that differ from other types of therapy, or is it one and the same?
Well, so there are, I've been to a couple of types of counselors. I've been to just a psychiatrist counselor, marriage therapy, communication therapy, relational therapy, and they're trained psychologists that will help you talk through your problems. And then the trauma therapy that I've been through has, it's a point of really making you go deep into your trauma using light therapy. So my trauma therapist has used red light, black light therapy, and also really takes you back and helps you relive the trauma. And it can be very scary to do. Here I am, as an adult woman reliving my trauma. Who wants to do that? Why do that? But it was important for me to work through that with my trauma therapist. And in full disclosure, I still do therapy. I don't go as often as I used to, but I still try to go at least once every couple of months. And I have a therapist who is also a specialist in trauma healing, and she's an incredible, incredible woman. I see her on a regular basis, and I talk to her, about things, and it's all the things that I've worked through, and don't necessarily go back and rehash that. But if I find something happen where I start displaying certain behaviors that are not healthy. For instance, I a couple of years ago went through a very traumatic situation with a family member of mine, and someone I loved very deeply and trusted very deeply, who very deeply betrayed me, and all of a sudden I just wanted to clam up and not forgive and hate. And shut them out. No, I'm leaving them. No, they're not involved in my life. And so I had to work through that with my therapist, and I had to understand, why do I feel like that? I learned, Greg, that it's because it's a protection mechanism, because I've been hurt before and I didn't want to go back to being hurt again. And it's a loved one, like my mom, right? This person's very close to me. And my immediate reaction was to shut them out. But that's not healthy. We can't shut people out that hurt us. People are going to hurt us. We have to learn how to forgive and how to move on and how to deal with that hurt.
When did you see a breakthrough in your journey of therapy? When did you see a major breakthrough?
Well, for me, and I always tell people, it isn't an aha moment. It's not like a one big catalyst moment. It has been an iterative process through my entire life of 34 years. I've been married 33 and a half years to a wonderful man, and he and I have encountered a lot of challenges, and we've grown in our relationship together. We've dealt with trauma together. We've dealt with abuse together. We've moved together. And so everything is about, for me, the growth has been iterative and deliberate, very deliberate. So I go through this cycle of every 3 to 4 years, I deal with certain things and go deeper. I'm never, ever going to stop growing and learning and advancing in my own healing, because I think it's important. I'm a mom today, I'm a grandmother, and thankfully, because of all of the healing I've had, I have been able to break the cycle. And my kids would tell you they have the best mom on the planet. Every time they tell me that, I tear up, because I just can't believe that I get to be a great mom.
Wow.
I never saw that modeled. It's such a powerful thing to break the cycle and to really trailblaze your own path in the family and in my career. As I'm a high school dropout, formerly on welfare, had a mom who was on welfare her whole life. And poverty was debilitating to our family growing up. And I just was determined to not stay in poverty.
Mm. Yeah. What was that moment that inspired you to turn all of that around? Like what was rock bottom? What did that look like?
Wow. Yeah, I had many rock bottoms and near-death experiences. Probably the one that most jumps out to me, and I shared this one in the book in more detail, is I was 19, living by myself. I had moved out at 17, living by myself in my apartment, working at a club, as a dropout, and my baby daddy, drug dealer that almost killed me. And I tell the story in the book. He had just gotten arrested for a big drug sting that the FBI was watching him, and thankfully I wasn't with him, but they busted him, his lab and everything. And I was devastated. And I remember being in my apartment. My mom had my daughter, was raising her. She was probably about 13 months old. And I remember being in my apartment, and I was severely hungover by myself. We had been up till 3 that morning, doing drugs. And I just went into the mirror in the bathroom. And I am not kidding you. I looked up to wash my face, and there was a skeleton facing me back in the mirror, like the face of a skeleton.
Yeah.
And that skeleton face was my mother's face. So when my mother was, when I was 3 or 4, my mother was severely involved in drug addiction. And when I was 3, she attempted to kill herself. And my grandmother actually told me the story and showed me the papers, because I don't remember at that age when I was 3. But she slit her wrists, and they found her in a pool of blood and admitted her to the Big Spring State Hospital. And I have those papers today. They life admitted her. She was never to come out, and God healed her, and she came out. But and I remember her telling me the story. When I tried to kill myself, I did it because I didn't feel like I had any value. And she showed me a picture of herself when she tried to commit suicide, and she was skeletal because of the drug use. That face in the mirror that I physically saw, I wasn't dreaming. I was hungover, but was my mother's face, and it was like a quick second. And I thought, oh my God, I swore I would never be like her, and here I am. My daughter's 13 months old. She doesn't know me. And it was just a really sad, tragic, like mortified, sick moment, along with being severely hungover. And I sat in my apartment, and I just said, I'm a mess.
And what did that, I'm a mess, right? That's a good label.
Yeah.
Right. And then what was the next step? What did your inner voice tell you to drag you out of that?
Well, I will tell you what I heard at that moment is, I have better for you. This is not you. I have better for you. And, I kind of pulled myself together. I had to go work at the club that night. And, it was like, at that point, it was like 3 PM. I'd slept all day. And about 6 months later is when I had my God encounter. 6 months from that rock bottom moment. My mother invited me to church with her, and she had been going to church. Again, she had been clean for many years, and she said, I really want you to come church with me. And I'm like, I'm not going to church with you. I don't want anything to do with church, especially not your God, right? But she just bugged me for a week, and I just, relentlessly, she was relentless. That's the thing about my mom. When she became clean and started her religious practices, she was relentless and would not give up. It was one example is at 16, I snuck in the house and 3 a.m, she's on her knees in my room praying. And I said, Mom, what are you doing? And she had lost control of me, but she'd say, I'm praying for you. She put me to bed, next morning she helped me get sober. She knew how to take care of someone who was hungover. But she was relentless. And so I had a God encounter, Greg, that I can only describe it as a supernatural God encounter. And I know many people might be skeptical about that. And many people understand God encounters. But remember, I'd had my rock bottom experience 6 months before that. My baby daddy had been arrested, was in prison. So my money was gone. I had to get on welfare. I just was ready. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think that's how it is in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I really wanted a different life for my daughter. My daughter was my catalyst. And I really wanted her to have a life. I wanted her to have a father. I wanted her to have a mother. And she was 13 months old at the time. And it was really very, very cool that God decided to reach me at my point of my pit.
And what did that look like?
I was in service and church and had just a supernatural encounter and felt God's presence in a way that I had never felt it before. And I very distinctly heard in my heart, I have plans for you. And then I learned later on, after I gave my heart to God and said, okay, I give. I am done. I'm a mess. I'm a dropout. I'm a drug addict. I don't know my daughter. I don't know what you can do with this life, but whatever you want to do with my life, God, I surrender to you. And I started going to church. I joined a little inner city church in Montopolis in Austin, where my husband was working as a youth minister. He's 10 years older than I am, and he was working with the gangs in Austin and doing outreach. And we started working with the gangs together as friends and became best friends for 2 years. And then on the 3rd year, I married him.
Whoa.
So my life completely turned on its head.
Yeah.
I got clean. I went to Bible school. I got into a good mentoring program and got around some men and women that really wanted to help Rebecca.
I had a come to Christ moment as well back in 2017. I was living in this apartment with a girl that I moved here with, and I just kept hitting those walls. Get a little momentum, smash. A little momentum, smash, and I was just tired of it. And then it was like, when it happened, it's like I saw the world in color again.
Yeah.
That's how I described that. Was it somewhat similar?
Yeah, it's funny because you say up at that point, I had to do drugs every day for about 4 years. And I was always either hungover or partying or hungover or partying. And I think I was missing out on that color. I can tell you that for me, my eyes were so open to the fresh air, to the blue sky, to the fact that I had potential as a 19-year-old to still have my life ahead of me and that my life wasn't over. And God just started putting people in my path to tell me, you have potential. Wow, you're really smart. I am. I'm a dropout. I'm dumb. No, you're not. You're really smart. Now, I did struggle a lot with my education and made really poor grades because I had a memory issue. I had ADD. There were issues in my past that prevented me from learning. And I was a horrible student. So I never heard that I was smart. I heard that I was a loser. My grandfather, when I got pregnant, said that the baby was born in sin and I could flush it down the toilet. And I was a sinner and a prostitute. And I don't know why he called me that. I was not a prostitute, but he, in his own way, he was just a religious zealot and he was old school. And God forbid his granddaughter get pregnant out of wedlock. He was a pastor of a church and it shamed him and he wanted to shame me. And, so all my life I dealt with this negativity. And so when I became a Christian and gave my heart to Jesus, all of a sudden I felt love. I felt unconditional love. When I opened up the scriptures and I read Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, to not harm you, plans to give you a hope in the future. Changed my life.
Love that. Wow. Okay. Dang. That's pretty empowering.
It is. And, the word of God is very powerful. There are a lot of scriptures that spoke very loudly to me. I had never read it before. Didn't care to. As I said, I didn't want my mother's God. But I have to just tell you what I loved the most about that journey for me was the restoration that happened between me and my mother. I saw her in a different light. I saw her not as a mentally ill, deranged woman who hated me.
Right.
But she led me to Jesus, and she helped me rehab. I moved back in with her. She was determined. She said, honey, you're going to have to live with me. You can't live on your own. Don't trust yourself. Quit your club job. And I moved back with her, and I had a really hard time, probably the first 6 months. I had a relapse at 6 months. But she was in that room with me, praying with me 2, 3 in the morning, helping me through the sweats, helping me through the anger. And, I said some horrible things to her during that time, and she just loved me. She just was there.
What did it do for you to see your mom make such a drastic change? Was that helpful for you to see that?
It was helpful because if she was far worse than I was. She spent 10 years addicted to heroin and had done some horrible things. So she had kind of went crazy. And so if I saw God redeem her and heal her, I thought there's hope for me. But, the biggest issue that I had with my mom was not her addiction or her past. It was the fact that she never admitted her pain to us. Because when I tried to talk to her about it, when she became a Christian, and she was actually a minister, so she would get on stage and minister the Word of God. She was a very powerful woman. But I would try to talk to her about it, and she'd say, "No, I don't want to talk about that. It's under the blood of Jesus. Why are you bringing my past up? No, I don't want to talk about that." And I'm like, "Mom, you have to admit that you hurt me." And she felt very strongly in her gut that she did not need to deal with her past. And that's where the mental illness came in, because she fell into a deep depression about 10 years before she died. When she got off the stage and the ministry work went away and she had no platform, she fell into a deep depression and she got cancer. So the depression didn't help her fight the cancer because she gave up on life. And I knew she was going to die. She was 62, and the last year of her life, I was, there with her 24/7 and took care of her and was always there with her. And she would say to me, I wished I had been a different mom. So at least she admitted she wished she had been a different mom. But so for 30 years, I could not reconcile this horrible person to now this Wonder Woman Christian who was so off balance. I also think she was bipolar, diagnosed, and it's like up and down. And so it was very confusing for me. But I will tell you, I was probably 30 when I came to the realization of loving her where she was and accepting the greatness of her. So 3 things that were great about my mom that I will always have in my memory. Number 1, she was an incredible prayer warrior when she got saved. Number 2, she's the reason I'm alive, because I should have been dead had it not been for my mom's prayers. And number 3, she raised my daughter.
Right.
She redeemed herself.
Right.
And she put so much love into that little girl. When I got Crystalline, Crystalline adored Grandma Grace. And quick, neat story, when she died, Crystalline is a worship leader. Crystalline sang her to heaven. She was in hospice. And
wow.
My mom took her last breath to my daughter, singing her to heaven. And that alone, for me, at age 30, I finally let her go and let her free and started loving her. And we had the best relationship the last years of her life, which I'm really grateful for.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other than God believing in you, who else in your life?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to tell you, I've had some amazing champions of Rebecca. I am a product of my relationships. I am not a product of an island on my own, power woman now. I have been surrounded with so many amazing people. My number 1 champion is the love of my life and my best friend, my husband, David. And he's been with me through thick and thin. We've laughed together. We've fought together. We've cried together. But he's always been my champion and has a great amount of faith in what I do and what I have the potential to do. He's a visionary. He's also a very strong man, and he has helped me, pull up by my bootstraps when I would fall apart. He's like, get up. I tell a story in the book when we first got married the first year, and I would get into when we would start fighting, which is normal for couples. I'd get into a corner and like rock in the fetal position, and he'd look at me like, "What is wrong with you? Get up and fight with me. Like, we're talking here. We're having a discussion." And don't get me wrong, I'm an incredible fighter now. And the other day we were spatting about something, and he's like, "Back down." And I'm like, "Well, you created this beast, because
that's right. It's your fault."
It's your fault, yeah. But he's just a strong man. He's a rock, and now, granted, he has his issues. Don't get me wrong, but we all do, right? But he's my big champion, and I've had a woman by the name of Donna Reynolds who took me in a welfare to work program when I first got off of welfare and started working for a very powerful woman by the name of Ann Richards. Mm-hmm. I met a woman when I worked for Kay Bailey Hutchison. So I worked for Ann first, and then Kay Bailey Hutchison, who became the senator, and met a mentor there, Donna, that took me in, and man by the name of Clay Johnson, who's my mentor of 20 years. He was President Bush's number 2 guy, and he's an MIT, Yale grad, brilliant. He believed in me and championed me. And my pastors, Rob and Laura Koch from Shoreline, and my youth pastors, Dave and Lupita Molina, back in the day. I mean, there were so many people that have come around me, my best friends and tribe members, some amazing powerhouse women that I hang out with that really encourage me. And it's so important, Greg, to surround yourself with people that believe in you and not tear you down. Yep. It really affects your psyche.
It's a huge pillar of life, your social circle. Do you remember any sayings that these people would say that really stuck with you along the way?
So one saying in particular that I live by is when I was in the White House, this would have been in my early 30s, President Bush, W. Bush, first term, 2001. I was so overwhelmed. I was hired for this huge job as a commissioned officer staffing the government for the president. And, here I am, a high school dropout, GED, inner city Latina, I'm coming into power with all these amazingly brilliant people and I talk about my first experience in the Oval Office in my book that's very powerful. But one of the sayings I remember as I was overwhelmed with this huge job is I literally almost shut down. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where your heart starts palpitating and you just feel like you're going to pass out because you're so overwhelmed with the task at hand or the issue at hand. And I went into my boss, Clay Johnson, who was at that time one of the top advisors to President Bush and his best friend of, 50 years. They went to Yale and Andover together and, just grew up together. And anyway, Clay was in charge of personnel and I was working for him. And I went with a huge issue, a huge problem. And his immediate response to me in the middle of my crises was, "Rebecca, it sounds like there's an opportunity for you to excel." And I looked at him and I said, I wanted to say, "What? Yeah. What the? What? I'm in the middle of a major crisis. I need you to solve the problem for me." He's like, "You're going to solve the problem, and I'm looking forward to you using this opportunity to excel."
Dang.
So I started looking at life, Greg, through a lens of not barriers and walls, but opportunities to excel.
Change the way you look at things. The things you look at change.
Indeed. And fast forward, he actually did my book launch for me and spoke in my book launch. And we're very good friends. And, 15 years later, I heard him when he was introducing me to come up, and speak. He said, he used the term and said, "Rebecca's the kind of woman that if there is a wall, she's going to do one of 3 things. She's either going to tear the wall down, figure out a way to scale it, or go around it. But she will not let that wall stay in her way."
Yeah.
And so, I've just had, when you have such strong mentors and people around you that are showing you a different kind of way, and it's a powerful way, it's a scale-up way, it really changes your trajectory and how you operate as a leader.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to get into you went into school through a program, right? It helped you
get off welfare
get
a GED.
Right.
Yeah.
From that point to the time you're in the White House.
Yeah.
Well, how long was that?
So I entered the Welfare to Work program right after, shortly after I got saved, a few years after I got saved, and I really wanted to have a career. And it was a program that got you off welfare, and they gave you a temp job for a state agency. And I happened to get placed with the elected official, Ann Richards, who was the state treasurer at the time.
Go figure.
And yeah, go figure. Just like that. That doesn't happen other than the supernatural hand of God.
Yeah.
So I landed a job as a temp working for Ann, answering her phones. I was her receptionist, and she was running for governor that year.
That's cool.
Yeah. And she was a fireball. I absolutely saw a woman in power for the first time in my life. And then she goes off to be governor. I stay, and I got promoted. Kay Bailey Hutchison comes in, another woman in power, who became eventually a U.S. Senator. And that's where I met my mentor, Donna Reynolds. And she sent me back to school. I still don't have a traditional college degree, but I went and got some certification at the LBJ School of Public Affairs, became a practitioner in human resources and management, and just started climbing my way to the top. But listen, this is a crazy, crazy climb.
Yeah.
1989, Welfare to Work receptionist. 2001, 2-star commissioned officer, advisor to the President of the United States. So that's like a 12-year journey.
Yeah.
And, I worked really hard, Greg. It doesn't come easy. You got to work hard. You got to be willing to do whatever. Like, every project I volunteered for, you need copies made, I'll make them. You need a meet. I put myself in a position where I was determined to get in executive meetings of the top officials, even if it meant making their copies for them. I wanted to sit in. I wanted to observe. I wanted to serve coffee. I want to hear the conversations. I want to see women in power and how they act. And one of my top line of sight women in power distant mentor. She never knew she was my mentor. I recently was with her at the Bush Library. Karen Hughes, she's an incredible woman, was the top head of the media for President Bush, Governor Bush and President Bush. And Karen and I are friends now, and we were together at the Bush Library a couple of months ago. And she's like, "We're so proud of you. You're our shining star." And I said to her, "Karen, you don't even know this, but back in the day when I was a little peon, I would watch you. I watched how you communicate and how you held yourself in meetings, and even how you dressed." And she's like, "I love that." But, just watching people and learning from people and being open, Greg, to just take on anything, it's kind of a way of life for me.
Sounds like you've got like a really nice growth trajectory. Well, it seems like it's your intention to have a growth trajectory, right? Climb the ladder, right? And think big and all that. Where does that come from? Because not everybody's like that. Some people are very happy with doing the same thing for their entire lives and what have you. Well, it seems like you continue seeking the challenge and the next step, etc.
Yeah, so I can tell you where it started, because I didn't know that way of life. I was a very fearful. So when people read my book, or they see me, or they meet me, they think this powerhouse, entrepreneur and former White House official and confident woman. So I was not that. When I married my husband, he tells a lot of stories about me. He always says that I knew her back when. I was fearful of everything. Did not like change. I did not like to challenge the boat. I never thought I'd be a homeowner. I was a renter. I've now owned 20 homes, and just lots of under take the least path of least resistance. My husband, who's 10 years older than me, is a crazy visionary. He'll jump off a cliff and then tell you he jumped off a cliff. First house we bought, he's like, "We're going to buy our house. We can't afford it. We're buying a house. We can't afford it." We had this dialogue, and he's like, "We're getting out of the renters. I want my son, who was at the time 1 and learning to walk on clean carpet in our house." And he's the reason we bought our first house with no money, by the way. He found a way for us to buy our first house. And of course, now 20 houses later, he's still doing the same thing. But so David was really a catalyst for me, because he was such a bold visionary, and he wasn't afraid of anything. And he's this bigger than life communicator. Part of it was because he became the assistant youth pastor and was doing a lot of public speaking, and he wrote plays and was performing them. And he just was out on stage a lot. But he's just very dynamic. And I was the shy one and the one that was afraid. And And he really pushed me out there in so many ways.
Yin and yang.
Yin and yang, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because now I'm like racing and he's like, slow down.
Yeah.
But, the people that I've worked for that I mentioned, both for K. Billy Hutchison and George W. Bush altogether, almost 20 years, all of them are just bold and just trailblazers. And I have watched people and emanated how I want to be. And over time, over my career, I have developed my own grit. I'm a product of my relationships, but I'm Rebecca.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, people that know me back when, and I'm still friends with my youth pastors that, took me in, they're blown away. They're like, this Rebecca here today is not the Rebecca from 35 years ago. And so the message here, Greg, is there's a constant evolving that can happen with you as a person, and it's a good thing. I'm not comfortable. My legs are impact and change. If anything that I'm doing does not create impact and change and has a positive outcome for whatever it is I'm doing in my life, whether it's career, community, family, it's what I want. And I've metamorphosed into a different person because I was deliberate about my growth. And I think we have to be deliberate in our growth.
Agreed. Can anybody do it?
Anybody can do it, Greg. Anybody can do it. Trust me. I will describe Rebecca 35 years ago. High school dropout.
Yeah.
Single mom, welfare, poverty, former addict, mentally ill. I had mental illness myself. You name it. And so there are no excuses. And, I could have made the excuse in my life that it's because I didn't have the infrastructure in my house and I didn't have any support. That's not even an excuse. Because guess what? When you turn 18, you have a choice of who you're going to surround yourself with and what you're going to do to pursue your education or your growth or your development. I'm currently, one of my big plights, my husband and I started a nonprofit 20 years ago in a LaunchPad, and we serve inner city kids. One of my current initiatives that I launched out of the Remarkable Woman of Texas win last year, I was so in awe of winning that award. Out of like thousands of women nominated, I win.
That's awesome.
That I said, and I told Cakeson, I want to do something with this. And I launched a Girls a Legacy initiative. And it was during Women's History Month last March, Women Empower Girls a Legacy. And I have 10 girls, all inner city girls, all Title I schools, very poor, that I'm scholarshiping to go to college. And part of the program is they get a scholarship, but they also have to be accountable to Rebecca, and we mentor them. So I pair them with women. I mentor 2 of them, and then I have other businesswomen friends that mentor. But my message to these girls is you can do anything you want to do. There are no barriers. We live in America. We're in the greatest country in the world.
Yes.
There's a reason why everybody wants to come here. We're not an evil country. We are an amazingly, abundantly blessed country where anything is possible. The tagline from my book is from the hood to the White House to Millionaire Entrepreneur. Where else does that happen? In America.
Yeah,
and so anybody can do it, Greg.
So we got to talk about the book, right? Is this a legacy project for you? Is this one of many? What's the overall consensus here?
So I have been, for 15 years, I've constantly, everywhere I go, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And I didn't feel like the time was right until the last couple of years. In 2021 is when I launched it. And I wanted to really, and I was really intentional about telling my story. And I was very cautious too, because I have so much shady past.
Sure.
And I'm a former White House official and, all this stuff. But I decided to write my book, and I decided to go raw and real. And the reason I did, and I call it the raw essence of Rebecca's all in that book, is because people need to know that it's possible, no matter what you face. And if they don't understand your raw truth, the transparency of your story, they're not going to see themselves in it, right? I can tell you, President Bush read my book, and I was with him in May, and he actually wrote me a note. Somebody gave it to him, I didn't. And when I saw him in May, he pulled me in and said, he calls me Becca. He said, Becca, that's a hell of a book you wrote there. And in his note that he had sent me, he said, I had no idea. I had some idea of what your journey had been, but I had no idea that you had really survived what you did.
Yeah.
I'm proud to have served with you. And I'm like, no, I'm proud to have served for you. You're the president. But, my book translates and impacts everybody. It's not one demographic or one kind of person. It's you see yourself in the story in every single sphere of life. And the reason I decided to write it is because I wanted to get my story. I wanted to lead with my story, Greg. I am a leader, and more I'm in the community and I'm sharing my story. And I didn't want anybody to muffle me because of the success that I've had. I didn't want to deal with shame. I didn't want to deal with an imposter syndrome of my past. I wanted to lead with my mess. And I think there's a way, John Maxwell has a great book called Failing Forward. There's a way where you can overcome, and I wanted to provide hope, but I also wanted people to understand that they're not alone in their mess. There's a lot of mess in America today, Greg. And I don't know. I mean, post a COVID environment, it's created just this new level of mess that people are just suffering. They're hopeless. They're hurting. And I know this because as I travel the country and meet people with my story, everybody resonates with it. And so I'm really glad it's a legacy project for me because I wanted to tell the story, but I wanted to lead with my story. I don't want anybody over here in the media or wherever else unearthing things about Rebecca. I am leading with my story. I'm taking ownership and taking my power back.
Yes.
Yes, I was a mess, but here's how I came out of it.
What would you tell somebody that's in your shoes, or in a similar situation from when you were growing up? What would you tell that little girl?
Well, my therapist during my trauma healing had me go through an exercise that was very painful, and she had me bring a picture of me at age 5 when my mother abandoned me, and when I was sexually abused also. And she had me go through this process and tell her something. And she said, what would you tell little Rebecca? And my message is, you are loved. You are loved, and you matter in life, and you have worth in life. And somewhere along the way, whatever trauma you've experienced, God has a way of taking tragedy and turning it into good if we allow Him to do that. I have so many people that have experienced tragic loss of loved ones and children, and everything happens because we live in an evil society. It's evil. Yeah. There's just so much mess out there, but we're not exempt from it, by the way. We're not exempt from tragedy. Even if we love God and we feel like we're in a good family and something happens tragic that hurts us, nobody's exempt from it. But how we're going to navigate and deal with it is so important. And I would say, no matter what you're in, there is a way out. Dig your way out. Find the right people to help you. There's always people that are looking to help you get out of the situation and get plugged in and get accountable and, get plugged into a good church, a good community, somebody that can help you through that, some counseling, some get around people that are going to help you see possibilities. Because if you stay in that mess and if you stay in that cycle, whether it's an abusive relationship, I was in an abusive relationship. My baby daddy almost killed me. And this is Crystaline's, I call him sperm donor because he wasn't a father. He's dead now. He was killed, but my husband adopted my daughter. But,
Sheesh.
That situation, I had to get out of it, Yeah. I am convinced if I had not gotten out of that situation, I would be dead today.
Yeah.
And, you always have choices. Always. As long as you're breathing, as long as you wake up in life and God gives you breath, you have a choice of your own future. Make those deliberate choices to change.
And it's a gift to have that choice.
It is.
You have to see it and acknowledge it as a gift.
It is a gift. And tomorrow's promised to no one. Mm-hmm. So take the opportunity today to take the action steps. The last chapter in my book is all dedicated to the action steps. And I call them the strategies and the roadmap to success in life and to digging out. And there's There's plenty of tips. There's so many great this day with podcasts. I'm a big podcast listener. I'm a big fan of Dr. Caroline Leaf, who is a neuroscientist.
Where's she?
She's phenomenal. She's
what state?
I don't know what state she lives in, but I'm
Leaf, Leaf.
Dr. Caroline Leaf.
Okay.
She is a renowned neuroscientist on the brain.
Yeah.
Renowned on teaching on literally the impact of the brain and your thinking and how it affects your health, your actions.
I believe that.
She's got like a couple million followers. She's amazing. She has a book and a podcast that I listen to called How to Deal with Your Mental Mess. And in her book and in her podcast, because she went up with the book first and now she's got a series of podcasts around it, she addresses very everyday practical steps that you can take to deal with your mental mess. Whether it's abuse, whether it's addiction, whether it's mindset that's keeping you in a certain place. And I'm a big believer in getting the tools. Get the tools in your hands. There's so many tools these days on the internet with podcasts and with teachings. And, back in my day, Greg, and you're too young to remember this,
resources.
But you had to physically sign up for a class and sit in front of a lecture and take a class on communication. I mean, now your resources are at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Take advantage of those resources and get yourself out of the mess.
Yeah. A little initiative. Takes a little initiative.
Just a bit.
You gotta want it a little bit.
Just a bit.
If you're, let me ask you. If let's say your mom was here, right, and you got to spend a couple hours with her, what would you tell her?
Oh, I loved my mom. My mom was so proud of me. Funny story. So my mom was hood all the way. And unfortunately, she could never get out of that, even though I tried to get her. When I became successful, I tried to get her out of the hood and get her a little house. And no, leave me alone. I'm here. I'm fine. And she died in her little house, and that's fine. But she used to tell people when I worked in the White House, she would tell people in Spanish, my daughter works, she's the right hand to the president. She's the right hand to the president. And when she would introduce me to her friends, she would say that. I said, Mom, don't say that. I'm not the right hand to the president. I'm like layers down. She's like, nope. You're absolutely the right. And she was convinced that her daughter was the right hand to the president. But she was very proud of me, and I loved her dearly. And I'm so grateful for the years that I had with her and her battle with cancer when I lost her. But I would say to her, and I did before she passed, Mom, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for passing on the legacy of faith. And thank you for teaching me that it's possible to get out of your mess. Faith. She was a woman of faith. Now, she struggled a lot, and she had a lot of mental illness. But, she was very old school. She refused to go to a doctor, refused to get medication. She thought God would heal her. And I kept telling her, Mom, God heals you through people. I think if she had gone to a doctor to get medicated and gotten stable, I would have her alive today because she would have beat cancer. But so I would just tell her thank you for the legacy of faith, and absolutely thank you for my precious, daughter and the 3 years she invested into her first 3 years of life.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, wow. So let's fast forward 200 years from now, right? Somebody's listening to this. What message do you want them to hear?
Gosh, so life is cyclical.
Yeah.
It's just, we go through cycles, and there's nothing new under the sun. We will probably be dealing with the same issues 200 years from now that we're dealing with today. And I think 200 years from now, God is still the same God, and he's still available to help heal, restore, renew. And I hope that 200 years from now, America will still be a beacon of hope for the world, and that we will still have as our DNA "In God We Trust."
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And how do people find you? Not just you, also your book. How do they get it?
So well, it's on Amazon. We've been very blessed. We've had bestseller in 4 categories, and we're still holding 5 stars. But it's on Amazon.
Love that.
I would love for them to order it if they can from my website, so I can personalize it for them. I just did a big book shipment yesterday. I do a book shipment every week, and if they go to RebeccaContreras.com, they can get it off that. And when they order it, their order will come directly to my inbox. And my team notifies me of, the people that come in, and I'll write little personal notes on their books.
That's cool.
But I stay very connected with our community, and I think it's important, Greg, to stay real and personable with people.
Yeah.
No matter where you go.
The personal
in life.
touches go a long way.
So, but yeah, it's on Amazon, and there's the Kindle, the audio version. I highly recommend. It's my voice.
Oh, that's the best.
And I read it in I read it in the emotion of the chapter. It was very, very painful for me to do, and it took me like 4 different recording sessions to get through it. But the feedback I've gotten from people that have done the audio is it's an incredible listen in terms of them being able to feel the moment of what I'm communicating. But yeah, I'm excited, and I'd love to have them connect with me. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Rebecca Contreras with the Ann. That's my author page.
With an E at the end.
It's Rebecca Ann, ANN.
Oh,
so
no E at the end.
No
Okay,
E at
perfect.
the end. Yeah, it's Rebecca with 2 C's, Ann Contreras, and then obviously subscribe to our website. When you subscribe, I stay personally in touch with you, and I give various nuggets and tips and communication points with my subscribers about once or twice a month, so they get to stay in touch with me. And I've had some amazing people write to me, Greg. I read every email. We were talking about emails earlier, and I shared with you, how important it is to respond to everybody that writes in, and I still respond to everybody that writes in. And I've had some incredible stories. I had a woman write me a couple of weeks ago that said she was pondering suicide.
Dang.
And she read my book, and it changed her life. And I just wrote her back, and I encouraged her and said, keep going, gave her some tips on what she needed to do to get trauma healing and stuff. But I told her, your life matters. And I'm glad that you wrote to me. I want you to know your life matters.
Love that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Very powerful.
Like, that's what it's all about. Right?
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed.
You put in the work, right? And you're making an impact.
So
It's
one person at a time matters, Greg.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody had told me when I was 17, a high school dropout, living in addiction, with no hope for a future and abject poverty, Rebecca, one day you're going to be an advisor to the leader of the free world, President of the United States. One day you're going to own a business of 120 people spread across 9 states and be one of the fastest growing businesses as an entrepreneur. And one day you're going to be a mom and a wife of 34 years with amazing children and grandchildren, and they're going to call you great. I would have laughed in their face. I would have said a few choice curse words probably. But one person, Greg, invested in me.
Yeah.
One person cared about me and told me that my life mattered. So every person matters to God.
Speaking of one person, last question. Who's one person that you want to have a conversation with that you haven't got to meet yet?
Wow. Gosh. Well, I met one of my sheroes Thursday, Elena Cardone.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And I got to have a conversation with her.
Years.
Yeah. She was in town for an event we were hosting, and my friend launched an event called Not on My Watch, which is combats sex trafficking in Texas for children. Elena came in, and I got to meet her and talk to her, and I gave her a copy of my book. She had heard about me from my best friend, who is very close to her, and so she used it as plain reading on the way home. But yeah, so that's off the bucket list. But I think the one person I would probably love to meet and just have a conversation with would be Tony Robbins.
Oh, yeah.
I love Tony. I love everything he stands for. I don't know if people have seen Not My Guru on Netflix.
The doc.
Amazing. But yeah, I just think he has been the person that has really taken the level of communication and motivation to a whole nother place, not just as a motivational speaker, but as someone who really cares about people and gets out there and tools people and empowers them. And
He's a giver.
I would love to, and of course he was a big supporter of the new movie, the new sex trafficking movie that's out. The name just escaped me. Tim Ballard's movie.
Yeah, we were just talking about
literally.
it.
And the name,
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom. Yeah, I just listened to his podcast. He had Tim Ballard on, and Tony was talking about how he was a big supporter of Sound of Freedom. And I love the fact that he's all about protecting children and women. And he's just a great guy. And to me, he seems like somebody that would be an awesome person to have just a conversation with.
Where does he live? You know?
I don't know. Probably California somewhere.
California.
They're all in California.
On the water.
On the water in a big Beverly Hills mansion.
Next to Grant and Elena.
Next to Grant, yeah.
Okay.
No, but I'll have to tell you, there's so many people I would love to have a conversation with. But he comes to mind just recently because I've been listening to some of his recent podcasts on the new ones that have come out recently, and I've really loved what he communicates.
Dang. Well, this is yesterday was a fired up Friday. I call Fridays fired up Fridays.
Yeah.
This is definitely a super Saturday. Yeah, speechless. This conversation is more than inspiring, more than uplifting. And whoever gets to listen to this, I hope they take a few of these golden nuggets from you and apply it to their lives and know that no matter what they're going through, they have a choice, right? That's the key message in all of this. They have the choice.
Yes.
To take advantage of that because you only have...
But don't wait too long.
Oh.
Don't wait too long because life is a vapor. It's here today and gone tomorrow.
And a sure way to fail is to start tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Don't put off what you can do today. That's a great saying, right?
That's right.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm just thrilled about being able to share with your listeners and viewers my story, and wishing you all the best in all you do and undertake.
Thank you. Yeah, let's keep making the difference. Folks, this is Greg Carlson, your host of Pivotal Moments Podcast. Till next time, we have Rebecca Contreras. Thanks again for meeting up with us today. Y'all have an awesome day. Cheers.